ever heard when it came to public speaking before. To the smallest thing of like, appreciate the sound of your own voice. And when I think of what I try and teach through resilience education and teaching people about becoming resilient, so much of resilience is rooted in owning and loving our own stories. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to borrow loving the sound of our own voice. Because if we don't say it aloud, if we don't love how our stories sound when they come out of our bodies, how are we supposed to root into the power of what we're here to share and the stories we're here to share? So thank you for that gem yesterday here at the GEM conference. And I want to set an intention for this conversation because I still, you walk into this time of life with one expectation. And Jam, I'll actually throw to you here because you said it so well when we were chatting last night that this conference was organized at a very different time than we're in right now. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So when the planning began, when I first talked to Amanda, it was like back in April or something like that. Like it was so far back that I know she had a certain vision for how the conference is going to roll out. And then all of this transpired within the past like 2 weeks. Now, the reality is what we are talking about right now, the conversations have been happening for 2 weeks, has been happening since the dawn of time. Okay. It's just amplified right now. So a pivot had to happen, not only from going in person to virtually, but now how we move about certain conversations during the conference. And I'm glad we're able to do it today.
And just for context, if you have been avoiding the news because of COVID reasons and just haven't had space to really sit in what the last few weeks have been like, I, as a non-Black woman of color business owner, have been able to do nothing but pay attention to the news, to the Black voices on my timelines and feeds, because showing up right now is really, really hard. And I think for some of us too, showing up in our businesses and trying to promote and trying to be the selves that we were a few weeks ago, or able to be more prominently a few weeks ago, is really, really hard right now. And it feels like there's a masking, or as Jenny often says, who is in the comments, a tone policing that as women of color, we experience both in the business world. And now as we have these platforms that are business oriented or impact oriented, that, showing up for me was a non-negotiable, and delaying my launch, that this was going to be the beginning of my launch strategy, this GEM conference, and then the rest of June. But delaying that has been my way of holding space for what's happening in the world right now. But when it comes to us finding power in our voices, I want to know from you, like you shared a very impactful story yesterday about a woman who shared her story in front of the audience. And I feel like that is so incredibly powerful. How have you seen people change because of how they've shared their voices publicly?
Oh, goodness. I need like a whole 3 hours for that. I think it's like an awakening. I think for a lot of us, we share our story within, like we play it in our head, we live it, we breathe it, we visualize how we would tell it. And in the moment you get that chance, doesn't matter where, if it's in front of 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 400 people. And the minute you open up your mouth and you let it out and you're like, is that my story? Did I just say my story? And then you get that feedback. You see tears, you see people taking notes, you see people thanking you. I don't think there's anything more freer than speaking your truth, releasing it out into the world, not knowing what the outcome's going to be. And then when you see how it's received by others, like, I don't know, nothing beats that feeling. You feel so strong and empowered that it's beautiful to witness.
And something that we jammed about last night, I'm going to keep saying jam because that's in my vernacular already, but now it feels like amplified, but is that when we share unprocessed vulnerability, and I think right now we're going to be seeing a lot of that, especially from the white community and non-Black people of color, because it's the first time that a lot of people are talking publicly about race issues, about not being racist or learning about anti-racism work. There's going to be a lot of projecting that's happening, and we're seeing that already. People's insecurities about their own racism. And remember, racism is a spectrum. So you can believe you're non-racist and still be on a spectrum of racism. As a South Asian woman, I'm on a spectrum of racism because how anti-Blackness is built into being a brown woman. But how do we process, and you've probably worked with clients on this, just about their own stories, when it's like, when you go on stage, this is not a therapy session. This is not the public avenue for you to process these things, but it's a place for us to either amplify voices or educate from a place of like groundedness. How have you worked with clients around like processing their stories so that they are consumable?
That's a great question. I think it depends on where you're telling your story. So if you're telling your story to a group of friends, it's a very small, intimate setting, then you could be as real and raw and release as much as you want to. If you're a keynote speaker, for example, that may not be the time nor the place to go into like, so when I was 5, my dog ran away, right? But then when I turned 7, this is what happened. That may not be the time to go that deep. But I always ask my clients, I go, when you're getting ready to share your story, especially publicly, ask yourself, what is my intention in sharing my story? Is it because I just want to talk and I just want to have the opportunity to be heard by a mass group of people? Or am I sharing my story in hopes that it's going to inspire someone, encourage them, maybe make them think twice about something they've been doing in the past, maybe make them like self-evaluate and go, wow, like this is what I need to be doing differently. And I think when you have that question answered, and you know exactly who you're speaking to, you know how you're going to present that story. And you want to present it in a way that's digestible. And when I say digestible, emotionally digestible, that you're not speaking to people that they're going to be so full afterwards, they don't even know how to leave the venue. They're like, my God, what was that? Like,
they're like, I'm going to need my own therapy session after that.
Yeah, like somebody do like a big flush. Like that was too much for me. So when you're sharing your story, you still want it to have that impact. You still want to be true to yourself, most importantly, but you want to deliver it in an emotional, digestible way that people could hear it, receive it, apply it, or think twice about it. Right. And I think when we think about that, then we know, okay, I know exactly what I'm setting out to do. My story is going to be told the way it needs to be told, and it's going to impact people the way I hopefully intended it to be impacted by.
3 questions that a speaking coach in the past taught me was ask yourself for your audience, and this comes to Instagram posts as well. How do you want your audience to feel? What do you want them to know? And what do you want them to do? And then you can embed your stories within that framework. So just repeating it for the audience. What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to know? And what do you want them to do? So when I'm thinking of my activism posting right now, because we're all in quarantine, I often think, what are the action points? Because if I'm just embedding like my shares right now about what's happening in the world centered in my story as a non-Black woman of color, I'm causing more pain than I am improving people's scrolling experiences. But if I'm embedding action or calls to action in those posts, these are educators that you can look to. These are organizations you can donate to. These are people whose stories you can consume, whose art you can consume. Like that's powerful for me as a creator to say, I'm not just here to take you through my emotional journey with what's happening in the world, because we're all going through that. But here's concrete actions you can take. And I think something we touched on yesterday, when you posted this week, Jam, you said there was no hashtags. There was no stories reposting people, reposting you. It's not about us. This isn't about saying thank you for coming into my DMs. This isn't about like putting ourselves on pedestals for speaking out. When as humans right now, it's a part of our responsibility to speak out. Can you share when you were making that post, what thought process you had around that aspect of it?
My thought process was everywhere that day. I'm known on my Instagram to be, I said what I said. And my Scorpio comes out, we talked about this, and I'm very comfortable sharing my voice and sharing my opinion on things. But for the first time, I felt conflicted. Because what I had said yesterday when Sheena was sharing was normally when conversations like this happen, I've been conditioned in the past it's easier for me to stay silent because I'm not very used to my lived experiences or my community's lived experiences to be the center point. And when it is a center point, that people get uncomfortable and then I'm uncomfortable because people are uncomfortable. And I felt like I had all these invisible eyes looking at me to say something. Jam, you always say something. Slayer of the mic, say something, Mike Slayer. And I needed to honor myself first before I honored anybody's expectations. And when I finally came to the point where I could share, I didn't even know if my post made any sense. Like I was just typing, there was no editing. And again, I didn't want people to slide in my DMs and it did happen. And they had good intentions. but I didn't want that. I just wanted it to be like, I almost wish I muted my comments section because I didn't want a conversation. I just wanted to put out my piece to free myself, to say this is where I stand, and then have my time alone. But it gave me the opportunity to release, and it also gave me the opportunity to have conversations with people, even though I was avoiding those conversations, and to go back to a powerful tool that brings us together, and that's having conversations. And I'm grateful that we did.
Yes. And this also brings in resilience frameworks around, for me in my education around resilience, what I've learned are there's key pillars to building resilience. One being community, which we're going to dive into. Another being self-efficacy and task-based planning. So when I was coming up with what we were going to talk about today, it was initially in the context of COVID. And I've been keynoting a lot about how we can be resilient in and rise in times of adversity. And so task-based planning, and we've heard a lot about planning and goal setting and systems versus goals and all these different aspects. That is actually so key in us building resilience and coming out of hard times. So reinforce those habits and those daily systems in yourself that you're going to need to rise. Like similarly to building without burnout, building in the face of racism for those of us who are women of color or against adversity requires us to put this armor on every day. That is why my morning routine is 2 hours long, because I know when I'm showing up to work, the embodiment that I show up in is actually really complicated. And I need to put that armor on first thing in the morning. So that's the self-efficacy and task-based planning. So pillar 1, community. Pillar 2, self-efficacy. Pillar 3 is wellness. So that wraps into those daily habits and routines. So how are you taking care of yourself physically and emotionally? And then work. We can't talk about resilience without talking about the money that we need to do what we can. And Amanda and I were going to discuss the shame that can come with reaching out to the government to need CERB or to require a business loan right now. There's so much shame these business owners can feel because we're asking for support from the government or from different places. But right now we are in a pandemic and we are facing headfirst an epidemic of anti-Black racism. So there's a compounding happening right now. And then we're trying to build businesses as women who have often deferred to build businesses because corporate settings and traditional workplaces don't work for us. So when we're looking at the compounding of oppression that is happening as women of color business owners, as women business owners, yeah, we need to be, and I drop F-bombs. I'm not going to do it here because I don't know what the cussing policy is. We need to be really resilient. Okay, so community, task-based planning, and self-efficacy, wellness, work, impact. When I'm building the curriculum for programming that I create in my business, it is rooted now in principles of anti-racism. Because as a business owner, that's something I can do in my programming. As a woman of color, it's something that my community needs when I'm building programming. As white women who are building businesses, you can think of how can I make my business not only inclusive, but a place where we can radically show up for one another. There's been a lot of calling out of Marie Forleo, of Amy Porterfield, of various people who do one Instagram post and then continue with their launches. We need to really look at ourselves and how we're showing up in business right now and say, I can do better. If you're an influencer and the companies that you're influencing with are telling you to still keep posting or are giving you freedom to post later, actually, why don't you reach out to those companies and say, why don't we do something together collaboratively that can actually speak to the anti-racism that we need to discuss right now? I, as an investor, I'm working on writing letters to the companies I've invested in because I can be an activist investor. Even if like you have an RRSP or whatever it is, you're an investor in companies, you can force them to act in certain ways. As an investor, you're a shareholder. So this is just like a little bit of what this conversation was originally going to be about, plus all the things that have been happening this week. I just wanted to get those pieces out. The foundations of resilience, the aspects of identity and how that messes with, or not messes, but like causes us to be even more thoughtful when we're building, and why right now it's really hard to work. I'm finding it really hard to do day-to-day work. And now do you, Jam? I'm off my.
No. Hey, listen. Not even. This is a really confusing time right now. And again, like I'm going to speak from my lived experience. It's a confusing time because one, this conversation that we're having right now that's being amplified in the world, it, like I said, it's been happening since the dawn of time. It's just amplified right now. Two, again, I didn't want to go here, but I'm going to go here. Yesterday, I got a really triggering message. Okay, 20 minutes before I was set to talk, I got a really triggering message where someone was like, shouldn't you be more disappointed in certain companies that and certain events that you're involved in that are not talking about what's happening? And I was like, putting that pressure on me to call people out, to be disappointed is exhausting, because on one sense, I'm hurt by what's happening to my community. I'm hurt is what is happening to marginalized people in general. But then I have to survive. And then it's kind of like I'm trying to find a safe space where it's like I care, but I have to survive, because again, you heard it in Layla Assad's poem. I have to work twice as hard and be 2 steps ahead just to live. So I have to battle my pain, but then I still got to show up strong. And then it's so much that like, it's like, here I am encouraging people to find their voice. And meanwhile, my voice inside is like mumbled.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exhausting.
It's exhausting because it is just we can't decouple our identity from our work. And it's so easy. Like my husband, he is a white man, and he's been ruminating, how am I going to post? What am I going to say? And he finally posted yesterday. And a big part of it is like, there's a convenience to be able to just check into the news and be like, wow, that's so hard. And then go back to your life in a white body. But like, I say this to my father-in-law all the time. I live with my father-in-law, our cousin Nathan. I live with 3 grown white men. And there's a lot of educating that happens in our household, but it's because when my children come into this home, if we are blessed to have them, I want us to be able to talk about racism. I want us to be able to talk about bias, but I can't wash this off. Like this is not, it's my lived experience every damn day. And right now, more than ever, we're realizing that even myself in a brown body, it is significantly harder in a Black body. And I didn't want to also go here, but here we are. If I have this stage, if we have these platforms, like right now, I couldn't not have this dialogue right now.
No. And again, it's about education. So for anyone who's listening right now, and this is uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable because I think right now our voices, particularly Black voices, are being amplified in a way that has never been amplified before. And when people whose voices have been suppressed for so long, and I'm doing my stress rub.
My hands are so cold and clammy.
Yeah, when people's voices like mine that have been suppressed for so long, we're not used to being heard. And now people are uncomfortable because they're hearing the truth. And the truth happens, like this is an educational moment. My husband is Eastern European. He's learning as well. Last week we got into a slight argument because I was venting about all these posts, and he's like, okay, listen, take a break. Like he's like, take a break, let it go, put down your phone. And I go, listen to me. Okay. As I like took off earrings. I was like, first of all, you may not want to care right now, but if we ever have a child and our son is Black, because he will be seen as a Black boy, you're going to care then, aren't you? Right. So you're going to listen and you're going to learn right now. So best believe I'm in this house shaking things up. Okay. And the reality is, when we are uncomfortable with conversations, my husband's very uncomfortable, but he's learning because he's that same uncomfortable person who's now going to go to work. And if anybody says anything about any population, for the 17 years of my career, I've been a disabilities advocate. So if he sees anyone saying anything that's, racially driven or making fun of somebody with a disability, he is there and he's saying something, right? But he's been uncomfortable. So right now I'm challenging him so that he could challenge others. And when we say challenge is not about being aggressive. Challenge is not being attacking. It's encouraging you to make a move. It's encouraging you to think differently. So just think differently about that word challenge, if it makes sense.
Calling out versus calling in. It's calling out. Like I yesterday was talking to my brother-in-law on text, and there was just a comment that was made, and I made I just normally put lots of adjectives in my sentences so that it feels and can land softly. I took those adjectives out, so it was much more direct. And that's how we tone police or police ourselves, But then
hold on. How'd it go?
It was fine. He was snippy right back. But then I took a second and I was like, okay, bring the adjectives back, bring the empathy back, and make this a dialogue. And I'm not saying to the people of color marginalized people who are listening that this is always our responsibility, but I, as a South Asian woman right now who am not Black, may have more capacity, and we're going to dive into capacity in a minute, to show up for these harder conversations at a time when maybe like the white folks in my life I am the person of color in their life. I am the one person. So I will show up for
Mine
this
too, for my in-laws.
Yes. And so it's like, that's a big responsibility. But I want to just emphasize this conversation around capacity. And I'll also share this one thing before I do, is an Instagram comment on my last post, because I'm an artist. So what I've been using my art for right now is to just, I see words each day or quotes that are being shared, and then I create art around them each night as like my release, and then I share them the following day. And so yesterday was a quote from Martin Luther King, that riots are the voice of the unheard. But Martin Luther King Jr. says that in the context of him being a nonviolent advocate, but understanding why riots happen. And when the comment section is kind of blowing up, I'm like meeting those comments with empathy, because I am standing in the power of calling in, except when my Scorpio comes out and I am calling out like crazy.
Let's go.
And like at this moment, I also want to say to the audience, can you hear the emotional labor of this? Like, if there's so much right now that you're like, wow, I never thought about that, or wow, that's a lot to think about. This is every damn day, every damn moment. This is the additional level that is on us as women of color business owners. So, okay, Jam,
you know what this reminds me of?
What?
If Kat is still in here, Kat knows that I'm working on an album. Okay, not really, but I have a soundtrack of Jam songs, and I love to meet things with compassion too. Don't get me wrong, but when you come from a place of malice, when you come from a place where you know your intentions are not pure, Kat, sing it with me. I am not the one. I will come for you. Yes, I will. I'm not the one. And this is the thing though. Although I'm a black proud woman, I am a human. I'm a proud human. So if I see any individual who is being attacked, who is being insulted, who is made to feel unsafe, the same thing applies. I'm coming. I'm protecting, because I'm a human. Mm-hmm. I'm a human who cares that, you know what, people need to exist feeling safe. And whatever capacity I have, whatever tools, strength, words, energy I have, I'm going to use it to ensure those people feel safe. I just wish that there were people who had the same response for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because it's been socialized out of us for generations, it's like, that's really hard labor, white people and non-Black people of color. That's really hard labor. But guess what? What we need you now, people are asking, like, what can I do? Look to anti-racist educators. They have online courses, just like all of us in the marketing space and all of us talking about our online businesses. People have built exceptional anti-racist education businesses. They're in the resource list that I keep sharing in the comments. My team aggregated a list of resources from everything we've seen on the internet. So there's educators on there. There's articles. There are other resource lists. There's a resource list that's made by white people for white people to educate themselves on anti-racist policies and things that you can do. But pay educators. Learn. We're all paying for online courses. Pay for this online course. It will change your business. I promise you. It will also open up your demographic that you're going to be applicable to. Open up the market. Being anti-racist is good for business. Period. End of story.
Being human is good.
Being a human is good for business. But also, it's like, if we think of it from an economic standpoint, I saw this live with a woman who, her sister's a realtor and is Black, and put a comment on her on her private Facebook. And then the head of the realty company sent a group chat and was like, let's keep politics out of business. Politics is inherently ingrained in business, guys. It is. You can't decouple the two. If we want to talk about macro level systems change, listen, I did my graduate studies in social innovation, which looks at how the private sector, public sector, and nonprofit sector can come together and make systems level change. Business is a key aspect of anti-racism work, period.
Yes.
End of story. We have to show up for this. It's going to be good for your bottom line. Impact first, And part of the impact strategy for your business shouldn't just be philanthropy, but should be constant self-education to ensure your business is at a baseline anti-racist.
Like, you think that's common sense?
Yes.
Like, what we're telling you is not revolutionary, eh? Like, it's straight facts.
And also, this is labor. Like, for Jam and I, like, we wanted to show up at this conference and talk about our businesses.
Yes.
And we could have done that. Jam did an exceptional job yesterday educating us all about how we show up and use the mic. And then she used some time to speak Layla Saad's words after that comment or that message she got 20 minutes beforehand. And that messes with us. But she did the work. And then guess what happened? Layla reposted it, Jam, to all of her people. Not only did she repost it, she reposted Jam reciting the whole thing. She did a shout out to Jam.
Listen.
And then she also said, I love Black women.
Listen, Jam. I sent her a voice note and it went like this. Hi. Whoa. I should do a better voice note. Let me do this. Okay, I'll keep talking. Hi, Layla, I'm Jam. You know that now. Whoa. And she told me, she's like, I love that voice note.
And someone please link Layla's account in the comments. It's in the anti-racism resource list that I've sent. But if you need to find out who Layla is, if you're wondering who Layla is, she is a great anti-racism educator. And
shout out to Jenny. Jenny on the blog.
Yes.
Shout out to Jenny J. Listen, when we talk about amplifying voices, this is an example of amplifying voices. Kat even told you, how long does it take you to share something? Like, what, 2 seconds? Jenny did this like that. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, shout out, Jenny. Thank you for seeing my voice. I love you. Yes. And then this happened, and I had to go to Shoppers Drug Mart and get in a puffer because I was wheezing. So thank you for amplifying my voice. And that's community. That is what community. When we talk about women supporting women and women empowering women, this is what it looks like. Amplifying voices that are not yours. Amplifying stories that you have not lived, but it deserves to be shared. Like, that is what it looks like. It's not just about saying hashtag girl power, yes, boss babes. It's also amplifying one another's voices and clapping and saying, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you. And that gives someone the courage to like just press on in ways they never knew they could.
Yes. Yes. Again, for the people in the back. Okay, I want to also take a moment because it's very insidious in business culture where we use things that we've appropriated from Black communities within the vernacular and what we use in our business, which in and of itself isn't always harmful or violent. But if you're saying, hey, sis, if you're saying, yes, queen, if you're saying all these various things that are rooted in Black culture and you're not saying something right now or amplifying other voices, there is something wrong. And I don't know how else to say this except that. I'm going to pass the mic right now because Jam's giving me the look she gave me last night when Scorpio was about to come out because Jam is on the cusp of being a Scorpio as well. So let's hear it.
This is my 2 cents. Yes, it is rooted in Black culture. But when we say yes, sis, and yes, queen, it's because for years we have been made to feel less than. People don't recognize us as royalty. People don't recognize our strength and our beauty. So within our community, we have to uplift and empower and remind one another to put our crown on, to shine bright, to be unapologetic, that we are sisters in this fight, that we are people who support one another. And because no one else wants to do that within our community, we have to constantly remind one another, I see you, sis. I see you, queen. So when other people do it, I see you, queen. I'm like, so I'm a queen now? Oh, why am I a queen now? Because this is a trendy saying? No, there's a reason why we say yes, queen, and I see you, sis. It's because we need to remind one another that we see us, because unfortunately society does not want to. So that's where it's rooted from. And unless you really see me, before you say yes, queen, say yes, Jam. Yes, Jam, I see you, Jam.
I see you, Jam.
Yes. Like, tell me you see me. Don't just make it a catch saying I see you, sis. No, just say I see you, Jam. I appreciate you, Jam. And that's good enough for me.
Yes. And what I also want to add here, and I mentioned this to you last night, Jam, and I was on the fence about but it's rooted in my identity and my story and my truth. The shiniest moments in my career Getting named to Oprah's Super Soul 100 list.
Woo!
Interviewing Michelle Obama on stage in front of 8,000 people.
Yo,
I'm not
Auntie Michelle. Auntie Michelle. Auntie Michelle.
Auntie Michelle. She's right there on the wall to remind me of what I'm capable of doing. And Oprah's right there to remind me of what I'm capable of doing. But you know what? Black women have elevated my career. Period. End of story. Michelle Obama, Oprah, many of my colleagues along the way, women who have done the work, who we see as the most resilient people. And I'm looking at the camera lens right now because we need to hear this. The women we look at in society as the most resilient, the ones who inspire us the most, the ones who raised us with the Oprah show, the ones who changed the country in so many ways alongside her husband being in the White House, are Black women. They are Black women. And we cannot deny that. We cannot hide that. If we're building our businesses that are impact driven or coaching driven or rooted in any type of personal or self-development, you know who mainstreamed that? Oprah. She is a Black woman. When she made her post about George Floyd earlier this week, I cried because when she talks about that experience so far in her career, after everything she's built and changed in her life, and she is still brought to her knees because of her skin color and the way that the Black community is treated, and we're sitting here saying, I don't know what to say. Really? Your career is built on the way culture was changed because of this woman. Like, respect is showing up. Self-efficacy, core pillar of resilience, is you teaching yourself, you self-educating yourself, you using Google as your best friend and finding out what is anti-racism, what is tone policing, how can I educate myself, pay the educators, do the work yourself.
If you could go on Google and look up the top 5 moisturizers.
I mean,
you could also look up what those terms mean before you ask somebody, you know? And when you mentioned the Oprah in my generation, in my years, that was the only Black woman I saw in media. And then when I got into TV and then I got into public speaking, to be that representation to my students, you don't even understand. Like, I'm out here fighting for women of color, don't get me wrong, but I'm fighting for my students of color hard. So hard. Like, those are my children, those are my kids, and I'm fighting to be an example for them and strength for them and a reminder that you could do this, you could be this. Like, this is not just me throwing around the term representation matters just as a loose hashtag. Representation matters is the spinal cord to my work, you know? And I think when we're having these discussions, not only are we talking on social media as adults, but it's for you people in this chat right now who are parents. Talk to your kids. Talk to your kids, because guess what? Your kids have friends. Your kids are seeing this in the media. They need to be encouraged in this conversation as well. Like, we need a whole other GEM conference just for like that. But really and truly, like, this discussion that we're having today, it's so empowering, but so uncomfortable for me at the same time.
And thank you, Jim.
Because I'm like, who's watching? What are people thinking?
And it's also like, I hold space for that discomfort while also saying your truth is the most powerful thing that can be heard today.
Yeah.
And you help people share their stories and find their voice. And you sharing the fullness of your story today is profoundly impactful and gave me the courage to do the same in this space. And you just came on board last night. So thank you for that as well. So we actually, last night when we spoke, we came up with like a few takeaways, action, conversation points for the audience. One around capacity. So you said yesterday at the end of your poem, passing the mic to you.
Yeah, capacity. Capacity, I learned the use of the word capacity when I was at a conference back in September. And I never knew what the word, I never heard of the word capacity used in that form. And it was basically, instead of saying I'm tired or I'm busy or I just can't do it, saying like, I don't have the capacity for this right now. So as women of color, I know right now everyone is searching for the women of color to follow. You know, they're like, got it, Follow one. Awesome. And then they're like, teach me your ways, show me, tell me, tell me. I don't have the capacity right now because one, I've been educating. I am living, breathing proof of educating. I am constantly breaking and battling stereotypes. One. Two, I am empowering and educating my students. Three, I don't have the capacity to educate on a daily, hourly, by minute basis adults who have the ability to look up things themselves. And for my fellow women of color in this conversation right now, you have the right to say you do not have the capacity right now to answer that email, to answer that DM, to post something right now, to have that conversation, because your mental health relies on your capacity to do so. And right now, our capacity and our mental health is at it's being attacked. We're constantly bombarded with what's being shown on social media. We're constantly bombarded. If we dare to go into the comment section and we see that there are people who say things, that in itself is an attack. So capacity really, I think, is the most empowering word you could use in your own self vocabulary when you're like, I don't have the capacity to handle this today. Maybe I do tomorrow. And if you say that you don't have the capacity, that doesn't make you less Black. That doesn't make you less
marginalized
towards your people. It just means you don't have the energy right now.
Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, so capacity for women of color and saying, I don't have it right now. Mm-hmm. But for our white audience or non-Black POCs who are watching, that discomfort is what we require you to lean into. So you're going to feel like you don't have capacity because things are uncomfortable right now. But actually, the core work in resilience is to lean into the discomfort. So when we're facing grief, when we're facing trauma, when we're coming out of the hard things that life has to show us, being truly resilient is not avoiding that hardness. It is putting in practice what you need to support you as you face the hardness.
Mm-hmm. So and I'm learning that.
Sorry?
And I'm learning that.
Yes. So for both our women of color, Black women who don't have capacity right now, and our white women and non-Black POCs who are listening and saying, I'm really uncomfortable and I just want to turn away. The thing that's going to help you show up is your meaningful and real self-care, is your systems that you have in place every day to show up for hard things. For me, I say this in my morning affirmations, I am the healthiest I've ever been. I meditate, motivate, move, track, and rest well every single day. Those are my 5 commitments to my meaningful and hard self-care. That's my acronym, MMMTR. I just made that up. It's not real. But if I
don't write that down.
Everybody write that my fake acronym. Everybody, it's yours now. But if I don't do these 5 things for myself every day, showing up for the world and showing up for my online activism, for showing up for my business is near impossible. So both for those who are uncomfortable and don't know how to show up, and for those who don't have capacity and are struggling to show up, take care of you. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to help us get to work. Mm-hmm. So that's capacity. And routine grows capacity. Routine is what's going to build capacity. Taking care of you is going to help you show up for the people around you. Jam has said this a few times around humanity, and like showing up right now is just a human thing to do. Another thing that's at the core of resilience, or at the core of being vulnerable, or at the core of being, in my opinion, a really good person, is listening to people, seeing them, and hearing them. We know this as self-care educators. We know this as women. When we feel seen, heard, and respected, everything changes. Everything changes. And right now, the Black community wants to feel seen, heard, respected, and they want to know that the people around them are showing up for them. And it makes me emotional because I want to know how to do more too. And I don't. And this hurts. But these are the things that are going to help us stay in this discomfort and show up through our businesses and where we invest our money and just reevaluate and rewire our brains. Composing self. The other aspect, Jam, that I'd love to hear you jam on is around questions. So conversation, you said, is such a key aspect of this, but so are the questions that we ask.
Yeah. Questions. Um, when we ask a question, I find that it comes down to what's your intention behind asking that question. And sometimes people's intention is, they know they're striking a nerve, they know that they're trying to start something here. But really, when it comes down to like asking questions, especially in the climate that we're in right now, we're asking questions to not only but to seek betterment. It's asking those questions that you're like, okay, I want to, I want to have a better understanding. I want to change my perspective. I'm on this journey of, unlearning right here. And it's even like how you ask your question. So like the question I got yesterday started with, how are you? And I was like, that's not a question, that's an accusation. That's not asking a question. When you approach someone and say, how are you? I'm like, no, that you might want to try that again. But again, with questioning, going back to capacity, there are some people who are so eager to learn and to grow and to change right now. And I applaud you. I thank you and I appreciate you and I applaud you for doing that. I just ask that you ask the person before if they have the capacity to answer this question right now. Because not only are we dealing with the current racial climate, but we're also navigating through a pandemic of COVID. So we don't know where people's heads are at right now, that they don't want to be Encyclopedia Brown. They just want to be playing with their dog or watching Netflix, and they don't have the ability to answer right now. So before we send those questions, be like, hey, Jam, do you have a few minutes for me just to ask you a few questions around this? Then give me that opportunity to answer it. But don't start off and then segue into the question, because then I feel like I'm up against a wall and I have to answer right now. Like, I think if we just reevaluated and slowed down our approach and we were more cautious or more aware of how we ask questions, then again, we're going back to that beautiful, beautiful process of having a conversation. That I think if we take a time to really have proper conversations and to listen after we ask, you ask, you pause, you listen, then we could see the amount of healing that we could go through together.
And yesterday when we were chatting, you had mentioned that right now we can't comfort people the way that we did in person.
Nope.
Can you share about that?
Yeah, because we can't hug. We can't hug. We can't go for walks. We can't, like, when we think about pain and trauma, what's the first thing that makes people feel better? It's comfort. Like someone hugging you, someone wiping your tears away, someone putting their arm around you. Like, look at the lyrics of Lean on Me. Lean on me when you're not strong. Now it's like, lean on me like 6 feet apart. It's a remix. You know what I mean? It's a Lean on Me remix. And we can't do that. And our community is so used to coming together. And right now you see people coming together with mask and sanitizer, and they're trying to like still comfort and support one another when we're so desperately missing that human interaction of touch, right? Mm-hmm. So we could still support and console one another by encouraging messages, by phone calls, by checking in, by sending like messages of love, like anything that is going to make somebody feel, going back to seeing, heard and appreciated. I think that's the one thing we could do in the time being before we, organize the big hug party in 2029.
So ready. 9 years from now.
Yeah.
I'll celebrate my grays with you. Yeah. So just to be mindful of time.
Yeah.
I just want to, I'm going to do one thing real quick. And sure. It's a little bit of a call out of the white women in the community for how I've been seeing some people showing up online, and a call in, because there's a few things that you can consider as you're going to get more educated, as you're going to listen harder, as you're going to find your words to amplify the voices of others. And one is, there's a high likelihood you will get called out, because it's hard to know what the right things to say are right now, but you can work through that discomfort, because being called out isn't the worst thing to happen in your life. So give it a try, do your best, know that we see that you're doing your best, and that if messages come in, if you get called out, it's gonna feel like a personal attack, because it is, because these things are so ingrained in us as a society that the unlearning of certain things that you didn't even realize you might have said something the wrong way is going to take time.
Can I just add one thing though?
Yeah.
Like when you talked about putting on our daily armor, which is like our emotional and psychological armor. Now you have to put on yours too.
Yes. Yes. Join us.
This with love. I say this with love in my heart. All right. Like every day I got to spritz to get my spirit in check. Now here you go. Spray yourself, because you know what? It's going to be uncomfortable. Don't expect people to come and be like, hey, I just don't take this personally. No offense, but when you said this last week, it's not going to come to you like that. It's going to be like, yo, Shirley, X, don't do that, Shirley.
Yes.
Don't do it. And just take it, Shirley. Just take it, Shirley. Go, all right, I'll do better. And
yes. And it doesn't mean we're not friends anymore. It means,
no, I still love you, Shirley.
I still love you, but I am here to call you out because it's just how it is right now. And we're practicing how to use our voices to stand up for ourselves.
Yes.
And that the labor for white folks right now is learning how to take that, learning how to process it, and then learning how to show up with having that have happened.
Yes.
It's not to make you to over victimize yourself, but it's to say, how can I try? And a great example of this for white women is Glennon Doyle, because she had a mad call out a couple of years ago when she was trying to speak about how white folks can be allies. And she writes about it in Untamed, her book. And she has learned through her journey of allyship and showing up how to do it well and how to be okay with being called out and owning her own identity as a white gay woman. And it's amazing to see. So there's someone for you as white folks that you can go to be educated on this, because she talks about it.
Yeah.
So the next is not being racist right now, or saying I'm not racist is not enough. Learning about anti-racism, paying educators of anti-racism work, and just educating yourself a little bit every day is important. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
People saying I'm not racist is the equivalent to me saying, but I'm not an angry Black woman.
Someone screenshot Jam right now, please.
I've been saying that for years, but apparently.
But now it's landing even more meaningfully. Yes. So also when you say, I'm not racist, it's a knee-jerk reaction because you're uncomfortable. So just like lean into the discomfort. Resilience work is rooted in leaning into and understanding discomfort. The more that you do this, the more that you teach yourself how to do this, the better suited and able you are going to be to face all the things that life are going to show you or throw your way. And Jam and I know this full well. What we're talking about does not diminish the experiences you've had in your life that have made your life hard. We value and do not compare trauma and grief. But what we do understand is that there's different levels to trauma and grief. And when it's institutionalized and when it's been happening for generations, the depth of the trauma and the depth of the grief is so much more. Yeah. I will never have to teach my son, if I have a son, what to do to not be killed in an interaction with police. That is my identity and my truth. Viv does have to do that with her son and talks about that. And if you need to find someone as well who you want to hear from, it's Vivian K on Instagram. Check out her stories and how she talks about how she's raising her son and what right now is making her feel and be and do in life. So, okay, number one, you will get called out. It doesn't mean you don't show up and you don't try and you don't keep trying. Not being racist is not enough. Remember the spectrum of racism. As it says in Avenue Q, everyone's a little bit racist. Own that. And then move yourself further along the spectrum towards anti-racist. Don't make this about you. Please, please do not make this about you. Do not center yourself and put yourself on a pedestal for saying something right now when it's the baseline thing people should be doing. And just humble, like just stay in that humble place of listening, learning, and acting on behalf of others or amplifying the voices of others. Lovey Ajayi, she posted something yesterday where it's like, if you don't know what to say, pass the mic. So if you don't know what to say on your platform, we're not looking for you to say the thing. We're looking for you to pass the mic, and like Jenny did for Jam, like I'm trying to use my platform to do right now, elevate the voices who are saying something right now and whose voices need to be amplified. And these are some things for you emotionally from a resilience perspective that can help you show up. The tangibles are in this resource list that is pinned. This is also not comprehensive. So if people have things they want to contribute to this, message me, DM me. I'll keep adding things to this list. There's a lot of these going around. The other thing is performance activism is a real thing. How are you actually treating the people of color in your life? Your posts might say one thing, and how you're showing up for the women of color in your life and your behaviors and how insidious mistreatment and gaslighting can be. Like, you need to check yourself in your own personal relationships in your own sphere, because you might be performing activism well, but are you really showing up for it well in your day-to-day life? This is uncomfortable shit. That was me cussing once today. I give myself one. Sorry, Amanda. Jam, is there anything you want to say here before we bring Amanda on to help moderate a couple questions before we wrap up for today?
I just first off want to just acknowledge everyone in the chat right now who, you know, we can't tell how honest or how reflective you're being, like how truthful or, you know, honest it may be. But I will say that based off what I've been reading, I'm so impressed. And I'm really proud of everyone who is saying, you know what? Yes, like call me out. Yes, I want to be better. Yes, educate me, because this is the power of conversation. And thankfully, Amanda allowed us to have this safe space to do so. I think it needed to be done. It's a big move for any event planner to switch some of the gears and say, yeah, let's have a conversation that is relevant to what's happening in the world right now. But thank you. That's literally all I have to add is like thank you. And this is how we hopefully start to make a few a few necessary steps to change the current climate.
And if you're an event organizer, a conference organizer, putting together curriculum, don't be afraid to include anti-racist dialogue and education in your programming. Even if you're a business, do some of the anti-racism education tools that are available, and you're going to see there's certain things you can pull in, even in curriculums for online courses, that you can do. So here as well, I want to drop an article. If someone could find it online, it's on Medium, from Avery Francis. So she just shared an article about being gaslit in the workplace by a white woman. And the reason I bring this up is because you might be surprised by the things you read in that article that you might actually have done or be doing towards women of color in the workplace. So if someone could find that, Avery Francis, Medium, gaslighting, and just put that in the comments, that would be great. And to bring it back to why we were both invited, Jam, do you want to talk about what your offers are right now with Slay the Mic and what you offer to the world from a work and impact perspective with what you do day to day? Also, I'd like to note, Jam is also an educator of young minds. She is a teacher and she's built Slay the Mic. So I would like to say, like, you are incredible. You are educating young people, showing up for them, representing on a day-to-day so that they can see themselves in the world in a more meaningful way. And you're educating grown-ass women on how to own our voices and undo what we weren't allowed to see and be in ourselves at the age that you're educating really important aspects of society.
Thank you.
So tell us, what do you give? What do you give in the world?
So what I've been doing for the past month, not even past month, past 2 months since COVID, was I introduced a special promo for my quick slay session. The quick slay session is anything that you want to focus on when it comes to your voice. If it's introducing yourself, telling your story, how do you pitch your idea, we could focus on that in that hour. But because I wanted to do a little COVID love, I extended it from 60 minutes to 90 minutes. Now, because yesterday, the love in this space, in this like chat, like my skin, like I know it's glowing, like I know my melanin is glowing, but y'all gave me so much more love that I am just shining, like I am radiating right now. So I offered another special where I offered a nice little discount. You still get the 90 minutes. It's $95. Shout out to every single one of you who signed up yesterday. I am so excited to help you take your voice to the next level. And your kids too, Slay the Mic Junior. I'm going to be bringing back some new content for Slay the Mic Junior. So if you also have a child who has a voice that deserves to be heard, don't worry, we're going to do that.
I love it. So from my end, we were going to be in the launch phase right now of my first digital program called The Next Right Step, Organize Your Mind and Life. So what I've realized in my resilience educating is self-efficacy and just figuring out how to organize your day-to-day life, how to build resilience overall in your life is one of the biggest gaps I'm seeing in folks, especially when it comes to not burning out, to showing up every day, to knowing what to do in life, and especially in the COVID era. So we focus on the 5 pillars of resilience I shared today: self-efficacy, wellness, work, impact, community. And I'm going to be interviewing high-level thought leaders. Think of Rupi
Higher
Kaur.
than Michelle Obama? Higher?
Well, I mean, she set the benchmark. Maybe one day she'll come back. One of my affirmations is I interview the world's most influential people on my Netflix show. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully a few years down the line, it's coming. But so for you to stay on top of your game, for you to feel so good in your life as you move forward with your planning, I am your person. I am your go-to, and we are going to be launching our program in July. So if you want to know about that, sign up for my newsletter. Link is in the bio on Instagram. And also I have a podcast called Lessons Learned. And if you would like to subscribe to that, follow our page, stay up to date with what we're doing, that would mean so much. If you leave a review on the podcast itself, a written review, that would mean so much to me. And these are all the things. I am so grateful for this conversation, Jam. You are wonderful. Thank you for pivoting with me last night.
I love that we got to do this. The first conversation we had was karaoke, and now it's this. Like, look at us.
That's so true. The first digital karaoke. Also, questions for the audience to take away. I love ending with journal prompts, and we're going to end with an affirmation each. So I'm giving you the heads up, Jim. We're going to share one affirmation. Everyone's going to say it aloud with us before we go and bring Amanda in for questions. Questions for you to digest. How do I feel about everything that was just said to me? So just write these down, journal about them after this, because processing what you're feeling right now is going to be really important. So just ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? What did that trigger in me? What made me uncomfortable and why? And then go through the resource list and say, the ways that I want to act are, make those action plans. The way that I want to act is, grammar is important. And then look at the resource list, ask yourself, these are the next steps I'm going to take. If it's donating, that's great. If it's buying programming from an educator, that's great. But figuring out your next right steps. And then saying the ways I'm not going to center myself in this dialogue are, and list those things out. Make this a little bit of your reflection, your values, principles, your just your promise with yourself about how you're going to show up for this work. And at the end of it, the affirmation I'm going to give you is, I am willing to do the hard work to show up right now. I'm willing to do the hard work to show up right now. I am willing to do the hard work to show up right now. That is my affirmation for you. Jem, what do you want to give as an affirmation?
So this is from the Slay the Mic affirmation deck.
Which I bought yesterday.
You got your deck. Hey.
Yeah.
Everyone say it. Everyone. My words have the power to make a difference.
My words have the power to make a difference.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Remember that. Your words, your story, your idea, it all has the power to make a difference. You don't know who you might be empowering. You don't know who you might be making feel safe. You don't know who you're giving the opportunity to be seen for the first time in a long damn time. It has the power to make a difference. Remember that.
We are here to make people feel seen, feel heard, feel respected, and we are here to act.
Yeah.
That's it. Come on in, Amanda. Thank you for giving us this time.
Amanda, can we have a dance party?
Yes.
Hi, guys. That was unbelievable, and I thank you so much for showing up. I love that you addressed that it's emotional to be talking about this, and that it's not easy, because I think it even makes it more impactful. I know for me it did. This isn't easy for you to come and talk about these truths. Jam, as someone who's lighting it up, and everyone knows who Jam is after this weekend. That's so to see her, I saw you rubbing your legs before you addressed it, and I was like, I can see, even in your body language, that this was asking something of you as somebody who talks all the time, that was making you have to dig deep. And I really thank you for that. And I, like, people in the chat were just so grateful.
Oh.
So with that said, and thank you all for doing.
Sorry, someone's saying, where can we get the cards? DM Jam directly. She will tell you how you can pay for them. You give her your address, and then she will ship them to you. Sorry to cut you off, Amanda.
Oh, no. And I think, for people that are building a platform and events, you have to be willing to make adjustments. If a speaker is showing up for you, and Komal messaged me at 10 o'clock last night.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, girl? Like, you do it. Like, I trust you. Like, I've been watching your career and know that you have that insight and that soulfulness that I know what you want to bring is going to impact everybody. So I was grateful that you did that. And if for people that do events and have platforms, you need to be open to that. You can't just have that. You have a vision of what you want people to take away, but these people are showing up for you on the stage. Give them that power to speak.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We're going to dance
from the audience. Could we do one or two, Amanda?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think the platform lets you go over by an hour. Like, I don't think it's going to cut us off. So
perfect.
Any questions? I know that I posted it.
While the questions are coming in, Amanda.
I know. Yeah.
Yes, everybody. Yes. Any chance to have a virtual dance party? Can you tell that I'm missing dancing in public?
Yes.
Oh my God. I would say for anyone, Komal and I had planned to talk about the Michelle Obama interview. She did a podcast on it, and it is so worth listening to. And if we're talking with Jam here too about finding your voice, that wasn't happenstance. When you listen to the podcast, you made that happen. You set goals and you had patience and oh no.
Out!
No. Okay, listen to the podcast.
I'm typing need more time.
I'm not submitting feedbacks because I think it's going to cut us out otherwise. That's so funny.
Oh my gosh. Are you still there?
I'm still here, but I don't know if anyone can see us.
I don't think so. Oh, that's too bad. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
I would, like I spoke about with Sarah Nicole, I'm willing to talk about how I got called out / called in, if people can learn from that, I'm okay with getting uncomfortable.
Oh, they can still see us, they said.
Okay, but not hear us?
I guess so.
I hope that there's a way to go and look at the chat after.
Okay, I'm going to jump out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. And I think maybe I'll see if Jim wants to go live, and we can go live on Insta and just wrap up with folks if you want to let people know we're doing that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Bye.